Alright, these are notes 10.4. This is where we actually start the trig part of the chapter. So in trigonometric ratios, you're comparing two sides of a triangle, and more specifically, we're comparing two sides of a right triangle. In order to compare them, we have to get the labels straightened out on which one's opposite, which one's adjacent, and which one's the hypotenuse. So it kind of depends on where you're looking at, on what's opposite, what's adjacent, and what's hypotenuse. So like, let's say I use this screw and I'm going from here, from this angle, where the A was at, the side that would be considered opposite would be the one that's all the way across. That would be the opposite side. If I'm looking from angle B though, now my opposite is no longer the A because it's not across anymore. So now my opposite would be this side. So side B, or side AC if you want to call it by its two-letter name. So when it comes to opposite and adjacent, it depends where you're looking from, which angle you're looking from, for which one's your opposite, which one's your adjacent. Adjacent means right next to, so like if I'm right here at point B on the top right corner of this triangle, my adjacent leg is going to be right here. So it would be side BC, or with the lowercase a, side A. If I came back over here to the first angle, angle A, my adjacent side would be this lowercase b right here, this side from A to C. So you need to understand which one's your opposite, which one's your adjacent, which one's your hypotenuse. These are focused on looking from A. So make sure that you're aware of what angle you're looking from so that you know which one's, if that should be your opposite or if that should be your adjacent. Tangent is the relationship from the opposite to the adjacent legs. And so we're not going to use hypotenuse today. So we just have to be aware that hypotenuse is not going to be used at all. And we're going to be paying attention to where we're looking from to figure out which one's the opposite, which one's your adjacent. Well, for this first example, it says find tangent of A and the tangent of B. When it comes to the tangent of A, the relationship is from A, the opposite would be 8 and the adjacent would be 6. So from A, the opposite is 8, that goes on top. From A, the adjacent one is 6, so it goes on the bottom. We always reduce our fractions, so you cannot tell me that it's 8 over 6. You have to reduce it. Both of these can be divided by 2. You get 4 over 3. So this would be your tangent ratio. If you're doing it as a decimal, you put it into your calculator, 4 divided by 3, and if it's more than 4 decimal places long, we're actually going to go to the 4th decimal place. So you need to come all the way out so that you have 4 3's after that decimal place. So the tangent of A would be 1.3333. In the directions, it'll tell you how far to go. If it doesn't say, you can get away with going to the 10th. But because this is talking about the tangent, we're going to go 4 decimal places. Very important. For the tangent of B, same steps, but we're looking from the other angle. So now we're looking from down here. So from here, the opposite would be the 6. And from here, the adjacent one, not the 10, 10's the hypotenuse, would be the 8. Once again, you cannot give me a fraction that's not reduced. So if you reduce this thing, both of these can be divided by 2. You get 3 over 4. And if you're doing that in the calculator to get the decimal, is 0.75. This doesn't have 4 decimal places, so you write what's on the screen. So 0.75, that would be your answer as a decimal. For the tangent of A, the opposite would be the 24. The adjacent would be the 10. Dividing both of these by 2 because they're even numbers, you get 12 over 5. And then if you put this in the calculator, you're going to get 2.4. So once again, we don't have 4 decimal places, so we write everything that's on the screen. Tangent of B, from this angle, your opposite is 10. From this angle, your adjacent is 24. Reduce that, 5 over 12. And then if you put it in the calculator, 5 divided by 12 gives you 0.4166666666. So this one we are going to round. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the 6 next to it makes it go up. So it's going to be 0.4167. Same process. So if we're looking from the angle A, your opposite would be 4 square root of 3. And your adjacent would be the 4. You have to reduce this. The 4 and the 4 will cancel each other out, so your answer would just be the square root of 3. In the calculator, if you put 4 square root of 3 divided by 4, you get 1.732050808. So if we round to 4 decimal places, it'd be 1.7321, because the 5 makes the 0 become a 1. Tangent of B, from this angle, your opposite is the 4. Your adjacent would be 4 square root of 3. You get 1 over the square root of 3. You can't leave it like that because you can't have square roots in the bottom. The way you deal with it is you multiply top and bottom by the square root of 3 so that you have 2 of them, which is what you need to take that denominator outside of the square root. And then what ends up happening is 1 times square root of 3 is the square root of 3. When it comes to the decimal, for this one, if you put it in your calculator, you go square root of 3 divided by 3. You get 0.5774. On these, it's just practicing rounding to 4 decimal places pretty much. So the tangent of 35, all you gotta do is go tangent 35, press equals, and this to 4 decimal places would be 0.7002. For the tangent of 85, you're gonna go tangent 85, you get 11.4301. For the tangent of 10, you get 0.1763. And for the tangent of 62, you get 1.8807. My handwriting was terrible. On the back side of the notes, it says use the tangent ratio to find the value of x. Round your answer to the nearest tenth. So here's how it actually works out when you have to do the work. This one is your opposite. This one is your adjacent. So in order to find the leg that's adjacent, you don't have the 3 sides to use the Pythagorean theorem. That means that instead, you're gonna go opposite and adjacent is why I'm using tangent. The angle goes right next to that. And then your opposite would be 3. And your adjacent would be the x. When you see this, if you think about it like 2 fractions, you would cross multiply it. And you would end up going tangent of 22 times the x, so x times the tangent of 22 is going to equal 1 times the 3, because you'd be cross multiplying. And then you would be dividing by the tangent of 22 in order to get rid of it and just have the x by itself. Well, that means that what you're going to end up doing is 1 times 3 is 3, so start with 3, and then divide by the tangent of 22. And the calculator is going to give you the missing side, which is 7.4. So x in this case is 7.4. Let me show you how quickly that can work once you get the hang of it. So on number 9, we're here at 35. 4 is the opposite, x is the adjacent. Because you have opposite and adjacent, we're going to go with tangent. Angle goes next to it. Opposite goes on top. Adjacent goes down to the bottom. And then when you see that the x is on the bottom, instead of having to go through all of the work we did earlier, you're always going to put the number from the fraction in the front, and then you're going to put your trig function after it. And the way that it works out, because of order operations, if the variable is on the bottom, then that's when you're going to divide, just like we did earlier. We divided by the tangent of 22. So in the calculator, you go 4 divided by the tangent of 35. And that gives you your answer, and you move on. Set up the trig function, put whether it's sine, cosine, tangent. Right now we're only dealing with tangent. The angle always goes next to it, then the equal sign, and on the fraction, opposite on top, adjacent on the bottom for tangent. When you see the variable is on the bottom, that's going to be division. If it was on the top, if it was like x on top and 4 on the bottom, then this would be multiplication, but everything else would stay the same. So like on number 10, from here, 12 is my opposite, x is my adjacent, so I'm doing the tangent of the angle, the opposite goes on top, the adjacent goes down to the bottom, and then I go, it's on the bottom, I'm going to divide, the number from the fraction goes first, divide because the x was on the bottom, tangent of 42 is your trig function, and then it goes in your calculator. So 12 divided by tangent 42, and you get 13.3. On number 11, from this angle over here, x is your opposite, and 45 is your adjacent. So opposite and adjacent is why we're using tangent. And then after that, the angle goes next to it, an equal sign, a fraction, opposite on top, adjacent down to the bottom. Now watch how this one's a little bit different. We still put the number from the fraction on top. We're still gonna put the trig function at the end. But because this one had the variable on top, instead of dividing right here, I'm gonna multiply. So in my calculator, I'm gonna put 45 times the tangent. I'm gonna put 45 times the tangent of 59, and then press equals, and then I get my answer. So x is 74.9, and we're talking about feet here. I'm gonna do one more example, just so you have at least two of the problems that are multiplying instead of dividing. So I'm gonna do one that's 3, and we're looking for this side, and this is gonna be 65 degrees. So from this angle, x is my opposite, 3 is my adjacent. I'm using tangent because of opposite and adjacent. Angle goes next to it. On the top of the fraction, the opposite. On the bottom of the fraction, the adjacent. Because the x is on the top, this is what tells me that I'm going to be multiplying instead of dividing. So when I set up my problem, the number from the fraction goes first. Then, because the x is on top, I'm multiplying. And then the trig function, tangent of 65, goes at the end. So I go 3 times tangent 65. And then it gives me 6.4. So x is 6.4. So this would be my answer to this extra example.